In my few years of journey of starting the wonderful hobby of wargaming and mini painting, I have tried, played, loved, or hated many game systems and miniatures. But one fateful day, I would stumble upon a game called Heavy Gear Blitz. To provide some context for Heavy Gear Blitz, it is a game made and published by DreamPod 9. This game is 1/144th scale or 12 mm scale. Heavy Gear Blitz is a squad-based miniature wargame where squads are made of gears, infantry, tanks, VTOLs, and much, much more. What is a gear, you may ask? A gear is a single piloted machine that is humanoid in appearance designed for combat that ranges in height between 12 to 18 feet, weighing anywhere from 5 to 12 tons. On the battlefield, they are flexible combat units that are a mix of mobility and firepower. All units in game and in the setting can go toe to toe or even best gears depending what they are equipped with, how they are positioned, and what their role is. The setting of Heavy Gear Blitz is a progressive storyline that makes sense as things are added and events happen. It's not just a reason because I can, it's meant to move the story forward. Heavy Gear Blitz all started on a planet called Terra Nova. The planet of Terra Nova isn't covered in water like Earth, but instead contains a resource-rich desert around the equator called the Badlands. The Badlands is the geographical divider between the North and South Poles. As the Badlands is rich in resources, many nations, companies, and people dwell there for work or to fight each other, for the money and power the resources can bring, or just to survive. Terra Nova was a colony planet for Earth until the government of Earth felt they were no longer worth the resources. Terra Nova was stranded. Chaos ensued. The streets of the cities were filled with endless violence. As groups vied for power, they eventually became city-states, which through peace or violence would join together to become leagues. In the Northern Hemisphere, there were three leagues: the Northern Lights Confederacy, the Mercantile Federation, and the Western Frontier Protectorate. Ideas of an alliance would wax and wane in the Northern Hemisphere. These talks didn't come to fruition until the Allied Southern Territories was formed. The Allied Southern Territories consists of four leagues: the Southern Republic, the Mekong Dominion, the Humanist Alliance, and the Eastern Sun Emirates. But in the South, there was never ideas or talks about peace. It was only war. The Southern Republic would go to war against each league in the Southern Hemisphere and win. Though called the Allied Southern Territories, the Southern Republic holds all the power compared to the vassalized leagues. These two superpowers of Terra Nova would proceed to war against each other, though not full-scale war. Not until St. Vincent's War. This war would start as any other engagement from the two hemispheres. A fight for land and or resources. But this was something. A crashed medical ship from Earth. The fighting ensued. Through bad luck, marksmanship, or even command, they released a biological virus. The fighting was in vain. There's nothing noteworthy on the ship besides this virus. Both sides left the battlefield battered, bruised, and demoralized. They had unwillingly become carriers of a virus that this planet and its populace had never experienced. It was catastrophic. The disease seemed to easily overpower the children's immune system of Terra Nova. 5% of the child populace of Terra Nova had died. Both sides screamed for blood, claiming it was the other side's fault for the loss of their loved ones. The only goal of this war was to make the other side suffer. Civilian targets became as optimal as military targets. The war raged on, but eventually the four leagues of the South, would run out of the steam. The war had taken its toll. The South surrendered. This war would lead to both the North and the South to militarize and expand, research, and develop new weapons for war. This would be a blessing. As one day, hundreds of years later, an orbital fleet from Earth had come for Terra Nova. As Earth cut off the colonies, a catastrophic war had started, simply known as World War III. The national powers were non-existent or in shambles, so the New Earth Commonwealth used this to their advantage. Through their Grells, genetically recombined experimental legionnaires, nothing more than tube-grown soldiers to fully subjugate Earth to their rule. The leaders of this new government knew that they and the people of the Earth were to survive, they would need the resources of the colonies to survive. As World War III left the planet scarce and exhaustive resources, they formed the Colonial Expeditionary Force, referred to as the CEF, were a military force designed for one purpose: to bring the colonies to their knees. The CEF forces which landed on Terra Nova were met with much resistance, not ready for the advancements made by the Terra Novas while Earth had left them to die. The early invasion was brutal. The CEF was able to take and hold ground with no end in sight. As the invasion started, the relatively young nation of Peace River would declare neutrality. Peace River was a Peace River was started by Albert Paxton, who was once a part of the Mekong Dominion of the South. They started as a humble mining company who would one day grow to be a gear and arms manufacturer after seeing what atrocities the North and the South did to each other during St. Vincent's War. Until one fateful day when they would spring their trap. They knew as Terra Novans, if the North or the South lost, it would end horribly for everyone, even those who stayed neutral during the conflict. Until the South and the North, knowing they would lose if they were to fight this war alone, allied together to beat back this threat. Even though through the combined might of the South and North, no progress was made on either side. It was a stalemate. Peace River would suddenly one day attack the rear lines of the CEF, finally changing the tide to the favor of Terra Nova. The ground forces of the CEF were worn thin. Realizing this, they changed their gaze to set their sight to space. The Terra Novans using suicide drones and, according to some sources, AI-controlled ships. It was a massacre. The CEF fleet was in ruins. The remainder of the fleet fled the Terra Nova system, leaving the ground forces stranded. The CEF had lost. The Terra Novans had won. The bloodshed was over, for now. The CEF would come back again, stronger than before, through subjugation of the other colonies such as Caprice. A mining world with mounts that are able to traverse terrain easily. Utopia, a world led by humans and worked by automata. And Eden, a newer colony with mobile golems that are amazing melee combatants, being the backbone of the military. But Terra Nova would also have new allies if the CEF were ever to come back, those being the Black Talons, an independent elite force designed to counter CEF and its allies. The nation of Newcol, a nation who wants to build a utopia, albeit no one would listen unless through force. And New Jerusalem, a planet of people who despise Earth, sometimes working with Terra Nova, as the enemy of my enemy is my friend. A faction that we're going to probably know more about and get rules for some time in the future, probably around Q1. So the barrier to entry for Heavy Gear Blitz is very low, very small. If you want to play physical, all you need is a rulebook, which is free on DriveThru RPG, or you can find that on the links below. And you just need dice, which I expect most people to not be the first game that you play with dice. And a place to play, optimally, for the bigger games, a 6x4, or for the smaller ones, a 4x4. And then lastly, a Heavy Gear Blitz miniatures or an army box is a great idea. $60 to $75 for a full-size force. Amazing, unheard of. Also, on the DreamPod 9 store, which is linked in the description, there's a sale for 20 more days. While most army boxes are on sale for $55 to $70 right now. If you were to play digital, again, the rulebook is free unless you want the physical version, and the links are below. Tabletop Simulator, which is found on Steam, is $20 when it is not on sale, but while it is $10. And of course, you'll need somebody to play with unless you want to play solo. And if you want to find a lot of great people to play with, again, look in the links below for the Heavy Gear Blitz Hangout server. And like I said before, a full-size force is 150 TV, though games are between 50 to 100 TV usually. How it plays. Heavy Gear Blitz is a combined arms game with emphasis on the gears of the universe. It is best described as a tactical squad-based games. Players take turns alternate activating something called a combat group, which you should think of as your squad, which will contain same miniatures of the same role, albeit or whether vehicles, infantry, VTOLs, tanks, or even the gears, over 4 rounds usually, though sometimes people play to 6 rounds. The game is based on a 2d6 system that increases or decreases, depending on modifiers and such, or sometimes it's a flat -1 or +1. When making most actions, which are called independent actions, or actually opposed actions, either or, independent or opposed, you roll 2d6, and then you add any modifiers, and if it is an independent roll, you need to roll above one of your stats, and then you succeed. So an opposed roll, both players roll 2d6. They take the highest dice and then add +1 for any other dice that rolls over their trait or 2, their stats. You then compare with your opponent's roll. If you get an MOS 0, you pass as the active player, unless a roll or trait specifies otherwise. If you get anything below MOS of 0, you failed. If you get an MOS of +1, of 1 or over, you add that to your end result or roll, which most of the time is usually used for damage. You get this by, again, you take your roll and minus your opponent's roll, which then equals the MOS. And to explain this, if I was rolling with a mech or a gear called a Jaeger, I got a 2, a 6, and a 6, giving me 7. As again, we take the highest roll, which was 6, then add any additional stats or any additional rolls that got over our stat, which was again a 6. Well, sometimes 2 will, but it is very rare for a stat to ever be a 2 plus. And add, again, +1 for any additional successes, which gives us 6 plus 1, which then gives us 7. My opponent rolls a 2d6. They get a 1 and a 5. They, in the end, have just a 5 because it is the highest roll. As this have no additional success, again, it will just be 5, meaning the MOS is 2. And how you do this is, again, you take your roll versus your opponent's roll, and you get the MOS. So I would add that number if it is possible or used in this action. This game also features reactions, meaning that you will always be engaged and never have to wait 2 hours for your opponent to make their first move. They cost one of your actions, or if you have the React Plus trait, you're allowed to make one free action. And depending how you build your list, you get to choose how you win by choosing different objectives, whether it be through holding an objective point, capturing someone else's objective point, just killing half a unit, or controlling a side of the board. And this is really amazing, as this way, Heavy Gear Blitz plays the same game, but has so many different options and endless possibilities. No game is ever the same, though the mechanics and how you roll in your units will usually be similar. Though there is a huge variety of units, so you will never get bored and you will always find a unit to fill in a role, or you can make thematic and fluffy lists, or you can make a list that's just good. The game ranges between 50 to 150 plus TV, though most people play 50, 100, and 150 TV. And something that's amazing about this game is I can just watch someone else play this game for hours, which is very hard for another game system to do, as most of the time, as a wargamer, you just want to play a wargame. And in the end, each Heavy Gear Blitz, or HGB, is a straightforward game to start, with complex layers along the way. And then there's two main, I guess you could call, sides of the war. Terra Nova, who are the good guys, those being the North, who have strong direct shooting. Units are somewhat specialized in their role, but overall they are a very generalist faction. The South, units are mostly jack of all trades. Vehicles are definitely an option to consider, no matter the faction, but especially here in the South. Overall, just a generalist faction with some quirks. Peace River, higher cost units, but they have a lot of ECM that is widely available, which is something used for electronic warfare. Or electric warfare in this case of my typo. Um, a wide access to quality equipment like lasers and just better burst weapons. Their playstyles tend to hurt your enemy with electronic warfare, and then shoot them while they're weakened. And then Nucol, a very mobile faction. Units are generally fast and have hover, meaning they get to ignore some of the penalties or movement you lose by moving over some terrain. Um, they are one of the Terra Novan factions that have the most allies. Um, and their playstyle is Glass Cannon faction plus friends. Though, to kind of note, they also can take some CEF stuff, which we'll get into later, and they're considered the quote unquote bad guy faction. And then we have the Black Talons. These are your elite slash expensive units. There's just a unit for any situation. A lot of their mechs have stealth, which meaning there's something called sensing. Like every mech has a sensor, which is 18 inches, unless otherwise specified, which allow for electronic warfare or indirect attacks like launching a missile around a building. Meaning that these guys are harder to target with non-direct fire. Um, a lot of their gears or units just have the veteran trait, which allow you to get some upgrades that are really good. But you cannot have, there's some limitations to the veteran and list building in that sense. Again, they just have elite units that are strong, but will be outnumbered. Positioning is very crucial for them. And then Leagueless. This is the Build-A-Bear faction. You pretty much just take whatever units you want from other factions with limitations, allowing you to kind of create your own faction. Next are CF and its allies, or subjugated colonies. First of all, the main big bad of this universe, the CEF. They have some of the best ranged in the game, with tons of lasers and ranged particle accelerators that just do a lot of damage, have good range, and can do something called Haywire, which can do an additional damage, and it gives you a minus 1d6 to attack and defense rolls. They're very maneuverable, and again, they're just very good at ranged. Also, shout out to something I forgot to put on here. Again, they have amazing tanks. Well, actually, I did. They have hover tanks, which allow them to, again, ignore a lot of terrain penalties. And they also have the best infantry in the game. And we have Caprice, mostly made of, again, multi-legged mounts. Kind of think like bug spider mounts, which are durable, able to climb to elevated positions, and are mid-range menaces. What this means is, in the game, if you are elevated, you get a minus 1 to your stat, which is a good thing, meaning you get additional successes easier. And then you just use terrain to your this faction uses terrain to its advantage. And then Utopia, again, they're kind of like the CF in that they're precise and ranged combat, able to take advantage of elevated terrain, as some units have the airborne ability. Armies are made up of highly specialized armigers. Think of those as the gear equivalents. And then they get to command droves of drones. And then they are the Horde Army of Heavy Gear Blitz. Eden are amazing at melee, have units that can take advantage of elevated terrain. They're also a very mobile force, which leans into hit and run tactics and or melee. Uh, Again, disclaimer, these factions usually work best when allied units are included. By no means are they bad by themselves. And then, no matter what faction you choose in Heavy Gear Blitz, there are sublists, which are just sub-factions that slightly modify the faction's playstyle, and most factions have units that cater into a specific playstyle, even if it isn't the faction's main playstyle. So play how you want to. And also, by the end of 25 or the start of 26, there are 3 more planned factions to come out then, greatly expanding the roster and playstyles and cool minis of this game. One of the most important things for a lot of wargamers out there is the hobby aspect. The models are very easy and nice to build from experience, and you could almost maybe do it if you're a more veteran builder and kind of understand how things go together without instructions. And even if there is instructions, they are very simple. Like, we're probably not talking maybe a page, 2 pages max. And no matter how you paint them, they just end up looking good, which is great. Because I know for some beginners or just some people who feel like they struggle at painting, that is really hard to like put in so much time and effort for painting just for the model just not to look good or how you want it to. But no matter how you paint it, most of the time they end up looking sublime. And again, there is no company telling you that you can't paint them how you want to. And again, another hobby aspect is with units being a fair price, between usually $10 to $40, it doesn't feel bad or punishing to try to enjoy your hobby. And in the next slide, we are gonna go through some of the community's mechs, which are amazing. So The Dangar Pirates, painted by Johnny Cat 93 on Discord, featured on the Dream Pirate 9 community page, dp9community.com if you want to go check that out. It will also be linked in the description. And so the Dangar Pirates are a modified, slightly converted, and painted new Coal Force that who the person who painted them has kind of themed them to be pirates. And as you can see in the top left to the bottom right, there's a lot of variety of units. This isn't even anywhere close to how many units a faction has. But something again that is nice is that a lot of kits can be used to make multiple units, but that is not the case with all kits. And next, these are some more. We have from, again, top left to bottom right, we have a Southern Force that is painted by Paladin Dragoon on Discord. And then right here, we have two tanks painted by Endelon, but owned by Louis. Uh, Roman numerals aren't my thing, so I'll let you guys figure that out. And then on the right hand top corner, we have this beautiful force or mech and tank inspired by Clan Ghost Bear, if you haven't realized or seen. And they're painted by Beer Ninja on Discord. And then these on the bottom half, we have three different forces painted by Jack Dandy on Discord. The first one on the bottom left being a CEF force. In the middle, a Northern force. And on the end, a Southern force. And again, top left corner, painted by Endelon, owned by Louis on Discord. And the top right, this is again his Paladin Dragoon's Southern Force that's slightly expanded. And then on the bottom left, we have a cool diorama scene painted by Uncle Heavy Gear on Discord. And on the right, we also have another cool diorama scene, or just a little action scene painted by Uncle Heavy Gear on Discord. On the top left corner, we have a CEF faction painted by Frederick on Discord. And then the rest of these are painted by Nomad Wolf on Discord. All of these being part of the Northern faction for Heavy Gear Blitz. So if this video has interested you, please check the description for the links for everything that I've mentioned, for the store, for the Discords, for the wiki if you want to know more about the lore, the rule books if you want to look at the rule, another YouTube channel that I love who makes amazing Heavy Gear Blitz battle reports, or the list builder, and also the compiled rules are down there. So thanks for watching. See y'all later. Signing off.